if we're going to talk about utilizing positive self-talk, I usually reframe it as productive self-talk. Because if I'm jumping in the ring, the last thing that's going to be helpful for me is saying like, oh, you're a great fighter. And I'm like, you got this. I love all the research, and I love using mental imagery and visualization tactics with athletes. Because if we can anticipate and picture one of those moments in our mind and try to practice and rehearse it, it's the same neural pathways as if we were in that moment.
Okay.
If I feel tension in my body because there's a tiger behind me, that's a good, normal fear response, and I'm gonna be running as fast as I can.
Definitely.
With burnout, I really try to help my athletes and clients understand that it's not just dealing with stress, but burnout is how do we prepare? You brought up a great situation. Preparing for a situation isn't just training. It's also, social media is probably one of the more common topics that I speak with athletes about, because the engagement in social media, as much as we all use it, it can be detrimental to performance.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to a new episode of the Runners Podcast. Today we're here with our guest, Adam Gallenberg. Thank you very much for being with us, and introduce yourself to the people.
Definitely. Well, it's nice to meet everybody that's jumping on this podcast. My name's Dr. Adam Gallenberg. I am a sports psychologist in the Twin Cities area of Minnesota. So that's Minneapolis, St. Paul. I've been with a group and company called Premier Sports Psychology. We are a private practice firm that specializes in sports psychology and mental performance coaching for individuals across sports, businesses, the performing arts, as well as the age and sport ranges as well. So if there's a sport or orchestra, instrument, or executive level that you can think of, chances are myself or one of my teammates, colleagues, has worked with an individual in that area. So it's really cool to blend sport and performance psychology across multiple domains, whether that's youth sports or professional. Currently, I am on some of our contracts at the collegiate level, as well as the professional level as well. So I do, our company does contract with a lot of professional teams. I'm primarily with the Minnesota Timberwolves. So a lot of that professional experience comes from that domain. And along the way has been across a bunch of athletes, like I said. So I'm just excited to, respond to the questions, share any insights that I'm able to on this podcast. And just really looking forward to this conversation.
Amazing, Adam. And I'm going to read a quote to you that you probably know, considering your background in fighting as well. But it says, the hero and the coward both feel the same thing, but the hero uses his fear, projects it onto his opponent, while the coward runs. It's the same thing, fear, but it's what you do with it what matters. And this was Mike Tyson's coach, Cus D'Amato. I hope I pronounced it right. And you've always mentioned, and the last time we talked, you mentioned that even the world champion fighters feel fear. So what should an athlete's relationship be with fear, and how should they handle it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I love that question. I love Mike Tyson, his coaching corner, as well as an athlete. He said it best: everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And that's what fear is. It's knowing that in certain situations we're going to get punched in the face, either figuratively or literally. And I love using combat sports as an example, because when it comes to fighting and when the objective of our opponent is to hurt us, there should be fear. I don't care if it's an undefeated fighter. I don't care if it's someone that's a world champion. Everybody experiences fear, stress, concern, worry. That is how the normal human mind works. But as you kind of shared with that quote, it's really what we do with that fear that can really separate us from either moving towards it or running away. And that's where in combat sports, you learn how to go through it because you're stuck in that ring, you're stuck in that cage. So there really isn't a lot of running you can do. And that's where a fear response is more about how do we recognize and be aware of where that fear is coming from, and how do we actually train it? So rather than navigating an issue where you do get hit in the face, you blink your eyes, maybe your body naturally tenses up. If we can train fighters how to now train themselves to get their hands back up, pivot to their lead side, measure that distance from their opponent when they do get hit, chances are we can do that across sport domains as well. So how do we, rather than being reactive in fearful situations, how can we be proactive in training? So then our natural reaction is something that we actually want to engage in, like pressing forward, keeping our hands up, navigating, controlling the court or controlling the field, versus what our original natural response was in the past.
Yeah, and Adam, I mean, you're now talking about that. So how can you switch from being reactive to being proactive? How can you reframe that fear into something like excitement, or just something that's going to allow you to perform in the right way?
Yeah, I love that question as well. You know, it really comes down to there's two parts that I like to really address with athletes. When we talk about the mind-body connection, we have to talk about both the mind and the body. So our fear response, we're going to have a cognitive cycle, thoughts, emotions, things that we internalize, feel, and think. And we're also going to have a physiological response to fear as well. So when it comes to changing the reactive to proactive, we actually need to address both the mind and the body, as well as any overlap when it comes to navigating a stressful experience. So one example is, you kind of brought it up. How do we change that reaction of fear to excitement? Well, a lot of that starts with the mind and reappraisal. So when we talk about our nerves, rather than nerves typically signaling our mind as like, oh my gosh, this is a stressor, this is a problem, like I'm feeling this way because like, oh my gosh, like there must be a problem, maybe I'm not prepared. If we can shift that mindset to seeing nerves for what they are, as a signal, like, oh, my body is trying to tell me something. Oh, I'm feeling this tension in my stomach because this situation that's coming up is really important for me. So already the body and the mind is naturally responding to a moment that we want to be successful in or address in sport and performance. So reappraising those nerves is one of the first steps to kind of shifting that mindset from fear being a problem and the nerves really being our body, our mind is trying to get us ready for the moment. That physiological side of things is also extremely important to address as well. So when we experience tension, when we feel that tightness in our stomach, knowing why our body is responding in that type of way is all about survival. And when we can take that time to notice where we feel tension or stress in our body, when we have that awareness on how to address that part of our body, like if I'm feeling tension in my shoulders, if I tell myself to relax, chances are I'm not going to feel any more relaxed. It's understanding like, okay, I feel tension. Let me actually control it. Let me create more tension in my shoulders. Let me actually flex those muscle groups. So then I know when I actually let that tension go, I am now in control of controlling that muscle group versus that physiological response to stress. And that gives my mind a little bit more energy, a little bit more awareness that I might be in more control of the situation than initially anticipated. But it's really understanding like my fear response in my body. Is it my shoulders, that tightness in my stomach, that diaphragm constricting? I know I'm throwing a lot.
I love it
in your group right now, but that's how complicated addressing fear is. It's simple in the sense of it's something that we need to normalize and something that we need to better understand. And it varies from person to person because we all experience fear very differently, but it can be changed.
So a lot of it, if I understand correctly, comes from the understanding that fear isn't necessarily bad. It's just normal. It's just the response that we're gonna get, and changing that relationship that we have with it, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, if I understand correctly as well, is not letting the reactions that we have just be automatic, like the one that you mentioned, like just tensioning here in the shoulder, but then actually ourselves manufacturing it in some way and taking control over that response that we're getting.
Yeah, taking control and seeing what we have control in those stressful moments is a game changer for the mind when it comes to sport and performance.
Okay.
I feel tension in my body because there's a tiger behind me. That's a good, normal fear response, and
Yeah,
I'd be running as fast as I can.
definitely.
When I'm about to prepare for the triple jump, or getting ready for the second half of a basketball game, or jumping in to the defensive line because it's third down and we need the stop, that fear response, it might be the exact same, but that threat level is very different. And our body doesn't really know the difference between those two things. Our mind has a really hard time noticing that difference of those two situations. It's just going to make us react the same way. So that's where that proactive piece and the awareness piece can do wonders for athletes, because we're really retraining when we experience stress, helping ourselves better understand, is this a life-threatening situation, or is this a like, hey, no, like, we really want to win this game. I want to do my teammates proud. I want to represent my coaches. For our Olympians and national athletes, I want to represent my country well. Better understanding where the fear is coming from.
I see.
That game changer for sure.
And Adam, I heard, because I don't know if you know who Alex Honnold is, the guy that just climbs through like the Shanghai building.
Oh,
Okay,
crazy.
so I heard something about him that he actually, like, there was a test done in him, and he actually experiences less fear than normal people. Like, his amygdala, it has less fear than other people. I don't necessarily know that that's the right way to put it, but is it possible for people to actually experience less fear as time goes on, or it should be tried to get to that point, or it's just a matter of knowing how to handle that fear?
I'd say it's a yes to both of those questions.
Okay.
The example that comes to mind is a similar way that we understand intelligence. So there is this biological component to measuring intelligence, but there's also this nurture piece to building and learning as well. So when we talk about that balance between nature and nurture, it really is this both and, where maybe biologically someone might have a lower threshold for experiencing fear, and biologically someone might have a higher threshold dealing with stressors or things going on in their life. But that doesn't mean this person down here, there might be a range. If we don't address the fear, if we tend to experience avoidance strategies in our day-to-day lives, that threshold is probably going to stay pretty low. But if that person is willing to develop that awareness, try to learn and cope differently, chances are, even biologically, that brain chemistry is going to change. There's been some studies done where when we talk about like matter volume in the brain, depending on certain coping strategies, stress reducing strategies, that can change brain areas significantly as well. So a both and.
So understanding that fear is a natural reaction, but it's something that can be worked upon as well. Perfect.
Sure.
And I mean, you mentioned how to recognize it and how to reframe it into something that's not going to harm our performance. But is there any way to reframe it into a way that it can actually make us perform better? I mean, can fear be something that's going to help us improve our performance?
Yeah. And I think that's where the reframe comes into play.
Okay.
And oftentimes when we see athletes grow in their career, they'll talk about how maybe early on in their career, maybe when they first transitioned to the varsity team, that was a really stressful experience. When they first they got their first start in their collegiate team or national team, or became a starter for their football club. It's all these moments. These athletes can experience fear and stress, and might have handled those situations in a difficult way, but throughout their career, they've taken time to better understand how they respond in those moments. And you hear athletes all the time talk about how now, when they feel fear, they're able to recognize, like, oh, it's because, yeah, of course I'm feeling stressed or this fear because it's playoffs, or I really want this championship, or I really want to help my teammates in this final run through. Reframing and reappraising that fear now is working towards their advantage, because now the athlete is in a more likely spot where they're still using their prefrontal cortex. They're able to think strategically and also remind themselves of the focus cues or the behaviors that help them perform. So now readdressing the fear as a motivator or staying disciplined, chances are they are going to improve their performance.
I see. And I like your point of changing your relationship with fear also allows you to enter those other tools that you have, because when fear is taking over you, like, it's very hard to think about the right way to do something. Or if you talked about some tools with your psychologist on what to do after you make a mistake, if fear is ruling you, you're probably gonna forget them. So it allows you to enter your whole mental toolbox as well, right?
100%.
Perfect. And now we talked a little bit about that thing that we experienced before the game, right? But then I want to jump a little bit inside the game and wanted to ask you, I mean, you're surrounded by the highest performers, not only in sports, but then also in other fields. And what are the mental tools that allow them to perform, let's say, the same way on a championship game than on a Tuesday practice?
Yeah. I love that question, because it all comes down to grounding ourselves to the moment. A lot of times when we talk about the moment, we think of the big moment, the playoff, the championship. And one thing I like to do with my athletes is, reframe it as, hey, what really changes? Does the size of the football change? Does the objective and the amount of points you score change? Do the rules change? It's like, no. Actually, this doesn't work for a lot of my soccer players, because I recently, it was actually through Ted Lasso, the TV show, where I learned that fields actually change. The size changes depending on where you go. I had no idea. So
I mean, it's probably just a matter of meters, but still changes. Yeah.
It still changes. Unlike a basketball or football, American football field stays the same. Court stays the same. So that metaphor doesn't work with all my athletes, but it really just gets at this idea of what changes is what we're interpreting. What are we calling it? Are we calling this a live scrimmage, or are we calling it a playoff game? Or are we calling it game 7? It's the term that we put in front of the event or the situation that tends to get our mind either racing and falling back into maybe that fear, that negative fear response, versus, okay, well, my effort doesn't need to be any different between practice and game 7. My attitude and my willingness to stay communicating with my teammates doesn't need to change if I'm feeling happy or feeling frustrated. It's grounding ourselves to the moment, but reminding ourselves of what truly is in our control is one of the best ways to kind of bridge that, what I like to call that practice to performance gap.
Is there also action you take in practice? So maybe putting more pressure on the players in practice, like having a scrimmage at high stake. I don't know, like the loser has to, I mean, in the lower levels, you say the loser has to clean the pitch and put the goals away. Do you do something like this as well on the high level?
Yeah, I mean, you see this all the time as a way to evoke, I would say, that competitive nature. For for even the highest level athletes, you put any type of wager like push-ups or even just tracking whatever the objective is, who gets the most stops or the most blocks. Athletes love to compete. And rather than it being like whatever is a punishment, it's really trying to find behaviors or situations to really bring out that competitiveness. Because when athletes are competing and wanting to work towards something and something in practice, they're probably going to want to do the same when it comes down to game time later that day.
Yeah.
So I love that question because any way to evoke that competitive side out of athletes can be an extremely helpful tool to bridge that gap as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important. And I was gonna ask a question just like that, which is, I love the idea of reframing and actually analyzing what's in front of you. Like a scrimmage is no different in terms of what you're actually doing than a game 7, but I can see how it would be hard to reframe it if in practice you don't give your 100%. If on practice you don't treat it the same way as if it were a game. So that component of intensity is also important in the practice if you want to do something like that reframing, right?
Exactly. And when I'm working with athletes and talking about reframing, I also do want to validate how practice is different from a playoff game. How a scrimmage is very different from a game 7 in the World Series or in the NBA Finals. It is different, and that's actually okay. It's okay that the stakes are higher. The situation is actually a different situation. How we respond to that situation, that's where, again, the fixed-minded athlete might get really stuck in their fear response, but an athlete willing to address the challenge, be aware of how fear comes up for them and how stress comes up for them, they are going to be more likely to handle that game 7 situation just like a practice and just like a scrimmage because they prepared for it.
I see. I love that last part that you mentioned, that being prepared is also a component of it. And that's when we get to the point of confidence. I think that's a very important component of it. So I want to touch on it as well. And you mentioned last time that we talked, I don't forget, that everybody has a plan until they get hit in the face. And you just mentioned it at the beginning of the podcast as well. So when an athlete gets hit on the face, when an athlete makes a mistake, makes a wrong pass, how should they reset? I mean, actually, this was one of my main issues. Every time I would make a mistake, I will let it get into my head.
Mm-hmm.
So how can they hit that reset button? How can they forget about it? Or should they even forget about it?
We usually hear the be a goldfish type of phrase, or we hear it like, hey, just put it behind you, next play mentality. And those are all great phrases and great mindsets to have in those moments. Chances are we're not goldfish in those moments. We are replaying that mistake because we're human beings. We want to either fix a mistake or we're beating ourselves up because we don't normally make that mistake. So the internal conflict is normal, a normal experience to have, but how we kind of negotiate that and train that is part of that prepared mentality. So like I mentioned with the company I work with, Premier Sports Psychology, our owner and founder, Dr. Justin Anderson, he introduced me to one of my favorite frameworks that I still use today, and we call it the S.E.R.R model. And what that is we just list out S.E.R.R. We have a situation, and any situation, any experience, any event, we're going to have an emotional reaction to it. If I watch a Disney movie, I know I'm going to feel sad. There's always going to be that sad moment, that sad scene, but I know I'm going to feel better at the end. There's always a happy ending in a Disney movie. But my emotional reaction is just a natural, normal response to the situation, the scene. With that emotional reaction, we're going to have that natural response. And that's what we kind of talked about before, where typically if I'm feeling frustrated, I might naturally tense up. or I naturally might isolate myself from my teammates. End result, chances are I'm not paying attention to what's going on around me. Chances are that tension in my body is going to impact my performance when I need more of a fluid motion, whether that's to make a more accurate pass, whether that's, in a combat sport, again, creating distance and finding that timing for a counter shot. So many variables there. What we tend to think about with regulating fear is we automatically think we need to change the emotion. But I always like to use the situation. There's going to be that emotional response. The S and the E stays the same. What we do have over is that response piece, knowing what our natural response is, our natural reaction, and how do we change that to a trained response. So if I tend to tense up because I'm 0 for 3 with shots on goal, how can I actually kind of regulate my body? How can I focus on just sprinting back and finding my opponent as my natural, my trained response when I go 0 for 3 versus maybe shrugging or looking up or looking down. As athletes, a 1/10 of a second could make or break that next point or that next play. So training the response under those conditions now is going to offer the likelihood of more positive results.
Definitely.
Really about the response, our natural response versus our trained response.
Okay. Is it one of the R's is response? Are the 2 R's one natural response and trained response, or what are the 2 R's stand for?
So it's situation, emotion, response, and result.
On result. Okay, that's the last R. Okay.
So we really help athletes look at that response piece, and we kind of split that where we have our natural response to stress, and then we have our trained response to stress. What we're really trying to do is we're not trying to change our emotion, our frustration, our sadness, our irritation. A no call in basketball should irritate an athlete. Natural response is to maybe talk to a ref. Trained response in that moment is reminding them, hey, talk to your teammate instead. Run back on defense in transition. Hey, just vocalize the play, the next play. Because again, that trained behavior, now the athlete is more likely to be external and kind of focusing on the game itself versus internal, stuck in their head.
I love it. I love it. I love the fact of not trying to change what we cannot control, but changing what we can control. In this case, you just mentioned the situation. A wrong pass is going to happen, so you cannot expect for you to give every pass perfectly. So that's not the fit. The emotion is going to happen, and I think this is where a lot of people get stuck. That they think, "Oh, I get frustrated, therefore I'm doing something wrong," and actually, it's just a natural emotion that we feel, and it's something that we cannot necessarily control. But what we can control is the way that we react to it, right? And I think that's a common denominator on what you've been talking about of changing, not trying to not feel the emotion, either if it's frustration, either if it's fear, like we said at the beginning, but then changing our response to that and our relationship with that emotion. And I just think it's like, for me, listening to that is way more relieving, because that means that I can still feel the emotion and that it's not going to affect me so long as I can control my response to it, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
No, yeah. I think that's great. And how do you, you kind of just went through how you go through like doing bad plays or just reacting to a bad call, but is there any type of technique that maybe, I don't know, I just once heard a psychologist say, okay, if you make a mistake, just drink a sip of water, or drink a sip of power. If there any type of technique that allows you to reset, to hit that reset button when you do something like that?
Definitely. And that's where, I think, again, the field of sports psychology is so unique.
Yeah.
Because our athletes, our performers are all so different. So there are going to be athletes out there where one thing that will help them reset is literally taking a sip of water. It's just a physical thing, a behavior, kind of like an alarm clock. We want to turn it off because we want to cut that sound. If we can just take that sip of water, just it can be a natural way to help ground ourselves back to, again, reminding ourselves of what's in our control. Other athletes, depending on, personality, depending on the sport, depending on the situation, like depending on so many factors, other athletes might benefit from, walking back to the locker room quick, or when they get to the bench, talking immediately to the teammate to their left. Like any of these tactics that can help someone behave or act in a way that gets them back to focusing on the moment, those are all going to be helpful tactics. Maybe talking to my teammate isn't going to work for me, but that sip of water, or looking at the focus cue that I wrote on my hockey stick or on my glove, those visual cues might work better for me. But again, it varies from athlete to athlete, and that's why I always encourage just learning, talking with your coaches, talking with a mental performance coach or a sports psychologist, so you can learn more about you and how you can discover the best way that you individually respond to stress in those performing moments.
Is there any idea how the athletes get to these kind of methods? Because everyone has a different method. I remember like one of the football players, when he gets on the pitch, he does like this to turn his mode on.
Yep.
Is there like any pattern?
As far as patterns, I think a lot of it is dependent on upbringing. So how an athlete navigated stress, or how their coaches or teammates kind of helped navigate those moments kind of growing up, and life experience as well. So when we talk about patterns, there's a lot of, I would say in some sports, sometimes like the physical touch, the cues become pretty natural, like a natural way to reset. Because I'm thinking of baseball. Baseball players are so used to seeing steal signs, whatever it is. So when they're trying to help themselves reset, they might give themselves like their own sign. I was talking with a colleague, and one thing that he has to help athletes just be more present is he has caution tape on the bottom of his door. So anytime it's that bright yellow caution tape, and it's just that signal, that visual signal of like, hey, like you are walking into a different space. You're walking into the space where it's like, yeah, we're gonna dig into some things. Caution. But it rather than it kind of pushing athletes away, it was just that visual reminder of like, yeah, I need to dive deeper into these things.
I see.
So yeah, it's very.
And I mean, these things require execution for the athlete to like actually work, right? And you're not gonna like make it automatic all of a sudden, right? So how do you go from, okay, let's do this, to a point that it becomes natural and it's just almost automatic? The fact that you all do all these cues, do you have to force it at the beginning, or how do you work around this?
That's a great question. I think of kind of the theory behind like the zone of proximal development, where kind of like a teacher helping a student, there's going to be that zone where they might need a little bit of a push, a little bit more encouragement to learn a concept or learn a skill. So it does take reps. It takes time to develop. You just like learning a new lift. Like I remember when I did, hang cleans for the first time, shooting my elbows through just felt so awkward. Having the bar kind of just rest on my shoulders, it just felt really awkward to get that motion down. So I, working with a trainer, like helping me, figure out what I need to do with my lower body, shooting my elbows through, imagining that as I'm squatting down, like I'm raising my elbows up, all these mental cues to help me execute a skill. And then after rep, after rep, after rep, I didn't necessarily need to think about those cues as much because it became more of like a natural movement, but that natural movement felt more natural because it had to be trained.
Yeah.
So again, kind of going back to like what we've been talking about before about natural responses and trained responses, mental skills are just like a lift. Learning a new exercise, learning a new drill, it takes time at the beginning, but getting those reps, being very intentional with that training helps it become like second nature.
Definitely. It relates to your point on fear and how to deal with it. I mean, for you to change your relationship with it, you need to be exposed to it. It's the same here. You need to do, because I can see a lot of people just, this is just odd to me. This is not who I am. And then just go into, okay, I'm not going to do it. But then actually that's how it's supposed to feel, at least at the beginning, before it becomes natural or automatic. Like it's not good. You're not going to be born with all these mental skills. So I think that's a great point that you mentioned there. And Adam, let's talk about confidence, right? Something that I definitely struggle with, if I'm completely honest. And probably, if I would say something that was my biggest limiting factor when I was growing up as a soccer player, definitely my confidence. I would have these moments of a very good amount of performance, but then I would have these moments in which my confidence would just go down and I would just perform bad, to the point where I remember, it's probably like I've never talked about this, but in one final of a tournament, and this was like 6 months before coming to the US. So I was like 17 years old here. I'm 20 now. So I was not like a little kid. I remember it was a penalty shootout, and my teammate like pushed me to go, and I literally like froze. I was like, I'm not gonna go. I'm not gonna do it. And I told him to go, and I just, that's something that I still think about today, and something that I just feel my coach told me, like, he saw it and he talked to me about it, and it's like, I'm giving you your confidence. I'm making you play. I really trust you, one of the best players, but you don't even trust yourself. And that's why I think it's such a big topic for young athletes. So how do you get confident as an athlete? Like, how does that even happen?
Well, to answer that question is one reason why I feel like I still have a job, because it's the question that so many young athletes, professional athletes, and parents of athletes are trying to find an answer and a solution for their kids, because it becomes that game changer. One thing I like to, especially with my younger athletes, like, grade school, middle school, high school, one of my approaches when I work on confidence with an athlete is I'll go back to, there's two types of confidence. There's confidence as an emotion. And even what we talked about earlier today, our emotions are reactions to situations. So confidence as an emotion is naturally going to go up and down. Okay. You make a shot, you're going to feel good. You miss a shot, you're not going to feel good. Those are normal emotional responses to the situation at hand. So confidence is an emotion. It's naturally going to be up and down dependent on the situation. So that's where, again, learning trained responses to build confidence is really more about how do we control that next situation, and the next situation, and then the next situation. Kind of going back to that S.E.R.R model.
I also heard that you should be, we talked about it before, like being aware of something. Like, doesn't have to be only in practice, but also, like, let's say you're in school and you get stressed by something, like thinking back and seeing what is stressing you right now and then breaking it up.
Exactly. Yep. That awareness piece, because the more that we can be aware of where we're lacking confidence, like why do I feel this way? Sometimes it can be really helpful to go back to moments where it's just like, oh, this makes sense, because last time I had to give a speech in front of my classmates, I burped in front of everybody, and that was really embarrassing. It's helpful to reflect. Like, reflection is such a huge component of mental skill building. So Matt, I'm glad you brought that piece up, because when we talk about emotions, it's like, what made me feel this way? It's that reflective piece.
You do it a lot with your younger athletes. Do you think it's easier to build that confidence from a young age, or like when people are more advanced already mentally?
I would say, when we talk about open-mindedness, I've seen some of my youngest athletes be so open-minded to a process. I've seen a lot of my professional athletes be extremely open-minded, and vice versa. I've seen a lot of my young athletes just not even thinking that any of this is real and being close to the process. I've also had professional athletes, grown adults, be close to the process as well. So I can't really, at least from my experience, I couldn't even pinpoint if age is much of a factor, just from my own personal experience, but it's just that level of being open to change or being open to a new process. But yeah, I think kind of going back to that question about confidence, like, we're talking about it as an emotion.
Yeah.
But with all my athletes as well, not just my young athletes, we split confidence from the emotion, and then confidence also being a behavior. So it's one of those weird terms where when we talk about confidence, what are we really talking about? A lot of times we're talking about how we react when we don't feel confident in our abilities. But then confidence as a behavior, now we can start aligning those things that we can do no matter what we're feeling emotionally, and helping athletes when we talk about power poses or looking up after a missed shot versus naturally our head kind of sulking down. It's changing like the physical reaction, changing our behavior to a situation now becomes those like that confident behavior. So that the power, like the research around a power pose, standing up tall, having your arms on your hips. There's a lot of great research. Something as simple as a power pose or looking up at your opponent versus looking down after a missed shot. Just the confident behaviors that we can do no matter what the situation is, that starts to also kind of build that level of confidence in ourselves, because we're showing ourselves we can do things regardless of what we're feeling emotionally. So confidence is that split, the emotion of confidence, and then also confidence as an action, a behavior, and what aligns with those two.
Okay. So if we think about that scenario again, I mean, I'm gonna use my example, but I think it's also good for people to put in some context. What was probably going on there, like for me to being afraid of, if I'm a good player, I'm a good player. I know I can hit a penalty because it's not that hard to hit. But what was going on my mind? And feel free to ask any questions for you to get more context and be able to reply in a better way.
I mean, my reaction to, and I'm so like appreciative of even you sharing that example, because it is such a normal, common experience for athletes to face in these moments, like the penalty kick situation, the overtime, the sudden death. That's our fight or flight. And in this case, it's our fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Like, we know when our sympathetic nervous system gets activated, we are going to have one of those 4 basic responses. That is just normal, natural human behavior. A lot of us would love to think that in a fight or flight situation, yeah, of course I'm going to fight. Of course I'm going to fight. We got to be real with ourselves. Again, giant tiger, I am not fighting. Giant tiger behind me, I am running. I am fleeing. I'd like to think that I would at least run away. I might freeze. Just the sheer fact, like, again, my sympathetic nervous system is getting activated at 1,000,000 miles per hour. I might freeze.
Yeah.
I don't want to test that theory. But again, just recognizing in those moments, especially in sport, it does trigger that nervous system. It's going to trigger one of those 4 basic responses. Can we look back at that moment? Can we take time to reflect see how we naturally responded.
Definitely.
And as an athlete, it's okay, how do I train this?
Yeah.
What's the next step? It's like, oh, I need to talk to my coach about this. Oh, my coach is going to force me to go in. Well, chances are you're then going to have a rep of experiencing your fear. And that is going to help kind of work towards that next penalty kick situation, and then the next and the next and the next.
Yeah, I think I'm now coming to a realization, which is very nice, but because I'm thinking, okay, but what could have I done? You know, I would say I was not the one. I mean, because I think preparation is a big component of confidence. It's very hard for you to be confident for you to play a final if you haven't trained, right? So that's a big component, and I would say I was probably one of the ones that was training the most, right? I can say that confidently, ironically.
I like it. I like it.
But I think it was that lack of awareness and that lack of reflection on how my behavior was. And because I never got the chance of analyzing, I knew I had these declines in performance. I knew that confidence was something that was lacking, but I lacked that system of controlling my response. I lacked that system for, okay, when I feel this certain way, this is how I'm going to react, to perhaps reset or to perhaps know that this is no different than just a training, you know. So now that I think about it, I think that's definitely what I was missing. And one of the most important points that you've been mentioning is not trying to avoid the emotion, which was something that I was trying to do, but then trying to control in some way the way that you react to that emotion. And that's definitely the part that I was lacking now that you're talking about all of this. And now let's talk about that part that I mentioned, which is preparation. How important it is for you to have confidence, to be prepared.
I think when we talk about preparedness, I mean, that again can build that sense of when we react to how prepared we are, we're probably going to feel confident.
Yeah.
So how do we prepare? I mean, you brought up a great situation. Preparing for a situation isn't just training. It's also like the routines, anticipating situations, anticipating stress responses. A lot of the coaching scenarios that I work with business executives is not just saying like, hey, what's the worst thing that can happen in this quarter? And you might have to navigate some like employee firings. It's okay, let's anticipate how would you actually want to navigate that conversation if you had to let someone go? And that is a difficult conversation to have. But when we talk about preparing or anticipating situations, then that gives that person a chance to rehearse, draft, plan, even vocalize what they might want to say to somebody, and then play out, okay, how would I respond if I heard me say that? So it's practice. And preparation isn't just training and practice, but it's intentional practice. It's deliberate practice. It's anticipating those situations and finding a way before the playoff game occurs, reminding ourselves of like, okay, how am I wanting to respond if I get 2 fouls early, or if I get penalized and now I have a 5-minute major and I'm stuck in the penalty box, or whatever it is. It's preparedness is just that mix of, I would say, of training and anticipation, and that's going to naturally build that sense of emotional confidence.
Definitely.
Because now we're ready for that moment.
Definitely. I love that point of not just training or going through the motions, but then going through different scenarios and how would you react to them, as you mentioned, just being intentional with the way that you're training. So when that moment comes, you think to yourself, okay, I've been here before, this is not
Yeah.
something new for me.
Exactly. I love all the research, and I love using mental imagery and visualization tactics with athletes, because if we can anticipate and picture one of those moments in our mind and try to practice and rehearse it, it's the same neural pathways as if we were in that moment. So, but we need to create that vivid image in our mind to kind of start creating how we think we might respond and how we are wanting to respond. So knowing myself, it's like, okay, like, yeah, if I'm in line, like, it's like anticipating, like, I'm going to want to freeze. Like, I don't want to go out there. I don't want to take that chance or take that risk. It's like, no, I got to watch myself take that step forward. I got to watch myself, push myself forward. I need to watch myself, get ready in line to take that kick, whatever it is. But again, it's building the awareness and the skills.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think if just taking that first step or doing something that there's no way back, like if I had already started walking, it was gonna be way harder for me to go back to where my teammates were, right?
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
also, a lot of people talk about self-talk or positive self-talk as a superpower. Is it the same process as visualizing something?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, like just from the brain science, I'm not entirely sure if they're the same neural pathways when we talk about positive affirmations and positive self-talk with mental imagery. But that positive self-talk, or even like the actual verbal self-talk that we say to ourselves out loud, can make a huge difference in the decisions that we end up making when it comes to performance, for sure.
Is it a tool you use often, or is it also like maybe at some extent it gets dangerous? People get delusional, maybe.
Yeah, I actually think that the biggest danger from positive self-talk comes into how we interpret it. And one thing I like to do with my athletes is, if we're going to talk about utilizing positive self-talk, I usually reframe it as productive self-talk. Because if I'm jumping in the ring, the last thing that's going to be helpful for me is saying like, "Oh, you're a great fighter, Adam. Like you got this." I'm still going to be scared. I'm still going to be stressed. And that might be a positive statement, but what's more productive self-talk, and what people truly mean by positive self-talk, is like utilizing the reframe of like, hey, I've trained for this moment. Yes, it's okay to be scared, but hey, like my double jab has been working on the sky ever since day one. It's like, hey, keep moving out to your right side, keep your rear hand up, keep pressing forward. Know you're going to get hit with that jab, but you can still press forward. Whatever the cues, the game plan, the strategy is, now that positive self-talk, it's positive, it's focused on the moment, but it's also it's really productive. It's
love
not
it.
me lying to myself.
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to be great. It's like, I might not be, because that would be, again, the positive statement. I know I would probably be cycling and internalizing that a little bit too much. So Matt's, to your point, that's where I think positive self-talk, when used incorrectly, can be very dangerous. And that delusional piece, you see that happen from time to time, but that ends pretty quickly if the outcomes don't match what the the delusion is. But
like, I'm gonna win, but like how I'm gonna win.
Yeah.
How am I going to win? That's productive. That is positive. That's more likely to work that athlete in the direction. Yeah,
Definitely perfect, and it's way easier once you're more precise, when you're more specific with that self-talk. It's easier to imagine that and to actually make that happen. I love that last point. And I mean, Adam, I love all these topics, especially because how I feel how important they are for me. I mean, I had the chance to work with a sports psychologist when I was younger, because I've dealt with a lot of injuries, so kind of like part of it. I got the chance to talk to her, and I saw the amount of value that you can get from just being aware, as you mentioned. And that's the whole point of awareness, of the name awareness in our project. Just because I think that by you just knowing yourself better, by being more aware of your emotions, the things that you feel, and then actually doing something about them, which is mainly what you've been talking about, you can actually make yourself a better athlete, make yourself a better person. But it all starts with you being aware of how the things that you do affect your performance, affect yourself as a player, and then actually coming up with a strategy to deal with them. So that's why I think what you've just shared with us is very valuable, and I really appreciate you just being willing to share your knowledge, to share your experience. And I think, I mean, it was super valuable for me. So I imagine it's been super valuable for everybody watching. So I truly appreciate it, Matze.
Yeah, for me it was amazing. I was just laying back and listening and enjoying. It was great.
Yeah.
And also like what I like when you mentioned like the power poses, and I was thinking, okay, I'm thinking about like top athletes, and I think about Cristiano Ronaldo. Like before he takes a free kick, he takes a power pose, takes a deep breath, and also when he misses, he always goes like this, like not looking down.
Yeah, like for example, one thing that I realized was baseball players, a lot of them, when they get a strike, they readjust their gloves, and it's kind of like and it's just like all these things, being aware of how a strike might affect how you approach the next pitch, so you do something about it, right? You have a trained response that you were talking about. So I really love all the things that you've just mentioned. Now, Adam, if you're okay with that, we can go through some rapid fire questions.
Sure.
Perfect.
Let's do it.
So, how to deal with being on the bench?
Be a strong teammate. When it comes to being on the bench, still think about your controllable behaviors, how you want your team to succeed, and ultimately that's going to help you as an individual.
Love it.
Perfect. What is burnout and how to avoid it?
Burnout, with burnout, I really try to help my athletes and clients understand that it's not just dealing with stress, but burnout is the experience where our typical coping strategies aren't working in our favor anymore. So knowing the signs of when we're burnt out is, again, helpful to be aware of what typically helps me, why is it not helping me right now, and trying to really identify where that burnout's coming from. Is it from my professional life, my sport life, my social life, my personal life? Where's the stress really coming from? And I would say that's one of the first ways. Again, we've talked about this podcast. It's in the name. Being aware is that first step to start preventing burnout, because how we typically cope is not working. So we need to know, where is it coming from first.
Is it true that burnout and depression are the same things like the same process in the brain?
I have always defined burnout and depression very differently, only because probably coming from my counseling background, my psychology background, I follow depression very specifically when it comes to like the diagnosis. So lack of interest and pleasure in things, difficulty in our day-to-day functioning. There's so much overlap with burnout, but usually depression, from like a neurological and brain functioning standpoint, is a little bit different from burnout. Similar experiences, but I would actually say that they're different.
Definitely. And how is social media hurting young athletes, and how should they navigate through it?
Social media is probably one of the more common topics that I speak with athletes about, because the engagement in social media, as much as we all use it, it can be detrimental to performance and even just our own awareness of how we then start believing or not believing in our own abilities. Because social media, we're going to see the best highlights, the best situations, the best performances from athletes in our own sport and across sports, but we don't see the falls, we don't see the training, we don't see the letdowns, we don't see the moments of freezing in the pressure moments. We really don't see those across the board. So the overconsumption of social media can just give this skewed perspective on our own abilities and our own trajectory of growth as well.
Definitely. We only see the response. We don't see the emotion that they're going through. And that response a lot of the times is a trained response, but that's what we don't understand. We just feel, oh, he just doesn't feel nerves.
Exactly.
Making reference back, right, to the terms I'm learning.
What is the one mental skill every high school athlete should learn before college?
My gut says any type of present moment grounding. I think if a high school athlete can really find a way to help ground themselves to the current moment versus running back to past experiences or overthinking the future, being present minded is one of the best skills a high school athlete can start early, because they're probably going to need it when they transition to college for sure.
I have been struggling with when I was 16 or 17.
I love it.
Sometimes I had a game and I played a game, and then after 90 minutes I was like, what did I even do? Like I was not present at the moment.
Yeah, I love that one. It's probably one of the things that I put the most energy on. Just being I mean, right now I'm not playing because I'm recovering from a knee surgery. But even like here on the podcast, like when I started out, it was hard for me to concentrate the whole hour and like actually develop good level questions. But it's like, and also just having a conversation with somebody else, being in a class. I think the biggest it's just that's what you're doing in the moment. And if you're not present, you're basically just wasting your time. And I just love you brought this point up. And
also
you go.
Like you mentioned, like being present in the moment, you're avoiding to think about like your past mistakes or like what's going to happen in the future.
Definitely. And Adam, I mean, I've learned throughout the podcast that different strategies change depending on the individual, right? So I'm going to ask you about how should a good pregame routine be, but of course that would change depending on the person. But if you could just give us an example for one specific case of what could be a good pregame routine or how to structure one.
Yeah, I think a great pregame routine is both something an athlete sees, they see the benefit. It's something that they've had some agency in as well. So if I'm meeting with an athlete pregame, a lot of it is based on their schedule, what their original concerns might have been, and then using that time and process to also be flexible. So a lot of times in routines, we think, oh, it's got to be exactly this time, this way, this space. But when we talk about preparing ourselves for competition, I think flexibility is one of those key components as well. Maybe that time is going to change, or maybe the situation is going to change, but the availability and the willingness to lean into whatever that moment is bringing us, I think is key for like a solid pregame routine.
Love it.
And of course, you work with some amazing athletes, but who do you think has the strongest mental armor on the Timberwolves roster?
Can you repeat that question? Strongest mental?
The strongest mental armor, like who has the strongest mentality on the current roster?
So I would actually, couple recent examples. I have one of my fighters that I work with, and just their growth and what they've done from day one of us starting to meet to where they're at right now is just it's night and day. It really is night and day, and it's so cool to see how they, like, their level of confidence truly has changed, and you see it in the warm-up routines and the pre-fight meetings and everything. It's awesome. And then I also have a violinist that I work with. Just a amazing growth mindset. The willingness to lean into sports psychology principles, and now kind of where they're at, it's almost like no one's going to beat them. And it's really cool to see that development as well. So yeah, the couple athletes come to mind. Yep, fighter and a musician. Very different environments, but that mental strength and that mental armor, I'd say they definitely come to mind.
And then for the big game today, who do you think like has the biggest or mentally is the best one prepared in the squad?
Oh, that's a great question. I want to say all of them. I want to say all of them. I think, we've had ups and downs in the seasons, and different players navigate the stressors throughout a season differently. But when it comes down to it, I think everyone is aware of this road trip. We have, a back-to-back today and tomorrow. We got some tough competition the next few days. I think the team as a whole understands the importance of winning as a team, and we're starting to see how they're kind of navigating that as a group versus like individual processes. So that I don't know if I can really answer that question. My hope is that they're all on that level of being present and ready for today.
I mean, Charles, you did a good job when you can call them out as a whole.
I hope so. I hope so.
And if we're talking about confidence, Anthony Edwards, right? I mean,
oh, it's such an amazing human being, and I would encourage anybody just to learn about his story, his upbringing, the way that he talks about confidence, the way he talks about the game, just such a competitive mindset, and he loves to compete, and it's cool to see that at the highest level. So yeah.
Definitely. I just remember the clip from him talking to Obama. I was actually talking to Mads about it before the podcast, and I just love it.
It's crazy, right? I love it too. When that pops up on my feed, I watch it every time because I'm just like, dang.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be saying that in front of our president of the United States, that's for sure. But hey, good job, Ant.
Definitely. And Adam, just to finish it off, I mean, you've talked so many valuable things, like I cannot even explain. But if you were to leave with one piece of advice for young athletes, which one would it be?
Know that whatever stress or concerns are coming up for you as an athlete, there's an athlete right next to you having those same thoughts, the same feelings, the same concerns, and it's not to invalidate anyone's experience. It's really, my hope is just every young athlete know that, hey, you're not alone in these moments of pressure, the moments of struggle, and it's okay to reach out to a teammate, to a coach, to a therapist, to a friend, because communication is key when it comes to building awareness, and it's got to start somewhere.
Definitely, Adam. And I mean, for me, it's not an exaggeration to say that this is probably one of the conversations that I've enjoyed the most and that I've got the most value from. So I really appreciate it. Just your willingness to just share your knowledge, share your experiences, just provide so much value to us. Because I think all these tools are those that literally change the trajectory of an athlete if they have access to them. And I think, although psychology in sports is becoming something more normal, something that people are starting to use more, I think there's definitely still a lot of place for growth in that area. And I think a lot of more people should benefit from it, because the benefits that you get from it, I just think are as good as training, as nutrition, if not more, to be completely honest. At least in my experience, that's how it's been. So again, I truly appreciate it, and just looking forward to speaking again, Adam.
Definitely. No.
Also, thank you for myself. I enjoyed every second, and also the fact that you're in so many different areas, I think it just makes it better. Like, you can talk about fighters, violinists, basketball players, or business people. It's so nice. And also, you're very well spoken. It's really nice to listen to you.
Yeah. I appreciate that, guys. No, I was able to jump on a few, kind of see some of the previous episodes. I'm like, dang, you have some awesome people.
I mean, the list now got just way better, right?
Well, I appreciate you saying that.
Of course.
No,
Of
this
course,
this
it's a
was
pleasure.
great. It was great to meet you both, and happy to jump on.
Of course. Again, just looking forward for that second chapter, and wish
Yeah.
you the best of luck today, Adam.